Now in the Super Mario games, we see quite a lot of weird things. Think of Goombas, humanoid turtles, and wacky clothing. However, that doesn't really bother me, you know? I'm kinda used to all of that kit and caboodle. But there's one thing that really demanded my attention as soon as I saw it. This green little gringo floating in the air, offering you a shiny balloon to hide so other players from around the world can find it. And one thing that I was wondering is, how many balloons does it really take to allow him to float in the air like that? It's certainly more than 3. So let's find out how many it really takes. Now, Luigi himself was actually not in the game for a very long time, until he was finally added in early 2018 for this Balloon World minigame gig. In this title, he has an interesting new look, wearing a green polka-dotted bow tie and a luggage case hanging on his back with balloons attached to it, which apparently allows him to float. However, in real life, that clearly wouldn't be enough to make him really float like that. This is just video game logic. So, let's debunk all of this. Now, there are a couple of things we need to calculate and figure out in order to get a decent estimate of balloons that would allow Luigi to fly in the air. So, we're going to do some very, very, very exciting math.
Wily, math is dumb, you egg! Numbers confuse me a lot and I hate them!
Hey, calm down. This isn't going to be super complicated, and I'm here to explain it all to you in the most simple way. This isn't going to be like good old math class from back in the day, or that you have every Thursday from Professor Peterson in locale 234 on floor 2 or whatever. No, this is going to be more fun, because it's the best type of math. One that leads to a completely useless conclusion that won't solve any problem or make someone's life better. This is to calculate something in a video game. So bear with me, because this took a lot of effort. First up, what is Luigi's weight fully kitted out like that? And yes, this includes the luggage case on his back. Now the easiest thing to start with is the thing on his back, because I can kind of guess its size, and then we can see how heavy such a thing is in real life. The best place to do any measurements and guesses on the size of things is certainly New Donk City. Here we come across a lot of real-life items we can compare him with. Now in real life, the case on his back is sometimes used for equipment like cameras, because believe me, I see those things a lot at YouTuber events, and they aren't necessarily lightweight. Now in order to get an idea of how big it is, we will have to first figure out how tall Mario is, and this will help us later on as well. However, we don't really know how tall he really is. People always say Mario is 5'1", which is based off a life-size statue of Mario in Japan. However, it was never once claimed to be on scale or accurate in any way. So we can't really use that number. So instead we will take something in the city itself, which is based on New York City, and then see how tall Mario is compared to it. We will be using a door since those are usually a standard height because of building guidelines. And in both America and Europe, these are 6 foot and 8 inches, which is about 2 meters. Now I got the following number after measuring the door in handheld mode. However, I first have to say something. I will do all measurements in this video in the same way to keep it even. And I will also be using the metric system, but don't worry, I will convert important numbers. And yes, I will make sure the camera is zoomed in the exact same way every time I measure something, using Mario himself as a reference for having the camera in the right way. Not zoomed in too much or zoomed out too far. Now for the door, we have a height of 4 centimeters and 2 millimeters on screen. So every millimeter on screen in handheld mode represents about 4.8 centimeters in real life. Using this, we can basically calculate everything. For example, Mario is 32 millimeters on screen. And with this, we will do the following. 32 times 4.8 is 153 centimeters, which is about 5 feet. And to be honest, he isn't that tall, but we already kind of knew that. Now using this, we can finally get back to our original purpose, figuring out how heavy the case is and Luigi himself. Using the numbers and same calculation as before, we can figure out the case is 38.4 centimeters tall. However, finding a fitting trunk for it was quite hard. After looking on the internet for something that would fit any dimensions I got was nearly impossible. I started searching for a case that looked similar and had sort of the same size. And using the information that I found, I will scale it down to a size that sort of fits with the height measurements we got in-game. In the end, it probably weighs about 5.4 kilos, or 12 pounds. It's certainly a rough calculation, but it's the best I could do. And what is inside doesn't really matter. I will explain that in more detail later on. Now let's move on to Luigi himself, which is a bit easier since there are loads of charts related to someone's height and average weight. Now this green little boy is actually a bit bigger than his brother, coming in at about 3.7 centimeters on screen, which translates to about 177 centimeters in real life, which is 5.8 feet. If this is really his height, then he's certainly quite a bit taller than Mario, which you can also see in almost any game and artwork of the two. And thanks to all of this, he's also quite a bit heavier compared to Mario, even though he's reasonably skinny. Someone of his size and height would most likely come out to around 59 kilograms, which is 130 pounds. And this is certainly on the light side for a person. However, thanks to this final calculation, we've come to our magic number. Luigi's total weight, which includes the case on his back, although we are assuming it's empty. This is because we could never really determine what is inside of it. It could be clothes, or even cameras and power banks, which don't weigh the same as you can imagine, so we will just add the weight of an empty case. This gets us to a total of 142 pounds for the man and his belongings. Now we can move on to our very next task, which is actually really easy, because we need to figure out the size of the balloon. But when looking at it, you can quite clearly see that it's a standard size balloon, since it's a bit bigger than his head, making it a standard 28 centimeters or 11-inch balloon. You know, the ones seen at birthday parties and amusement parks? But how many of these would you have to fill with helium to get Luigi up into the air? Well, in order to figure this out, we will first have to know how much weight a balloon of that size can lift. Now first we have to determine how many liters of helium a sphere like this can hold, and the equation for this is really difficult, even involving the number pi, which stands for the number 3.14159265 and a bunch of other numbers. As soon as that comes into play, you really know it's math. Believe me. Because I had to figure all of this out. I did it using the law of buoyancy. Because you need to look at it like this. A helium-filled balloon held by a string is basically floating in a pool of air. Similar to pressing a balloon filled with air underwater, it wants to go up. As long as the helium plus the balloon is lighter than the air it displaces, the balloon will float in the air. In the end, there's a 1 gram per liter difference between air and helium. So if you contain it in something light and have a lot of liters, then it really adds up. This also explains why blimps and balloons are generally quite large. They have to displace a lot of air to float. So with balloons, the name of the game is light materials and as much helium as possible, which they are quite good at overall. And all I had to do after figuring this out is calculating the volume of the balloon. And to figure this out, we first needed the radius of it and worked that back to a more suitable size for the balloon's odd shape. This is where the really difficult math came in, so I will spare you that for sure. And I gotta say, there are some numbers on the average lift capacity of a balloon on the internet, so that did help me a lot. The answer we got from this is 14 liters, so it can lift about 14 grams, assuming that the weight of the balloon itself and the string are negligible. And you know what this also means? Now we can get our final answer of how many balloons Luigi would realistically need. And I gotta say, the number will certainly shock you, since even I was flabbergasted when I hit enter on this one. What I did was turn his weight of 142 pounds in grams, which is 64,410, and divided that through the lifting power of a single balloon. And in the end, our tall green boy needs a whopping 4,601 balloons. And this would allow him to just float in place. And if we would assume that the luggage on his back weighs as much as a carry-on seen on normal flights, then that would add another 324 balloons. Keep in mind, all of those are just added thanks to a 10-pound weight difference. And you might even have to add another 50 balloons just for his clothing. To be more exact, the clothing would add another 81 balloons. So if we would add these extras, we would come to a total of 5,006 balloons. Now let's put all of this into perspective with what we see in the game. Because he would actually need more than 1,500 times the amount of balloons we see in Super Mario Odyssey. And now is the time where we will try to put it in perspective with a cool visual. So here we go!
Jeemski Jimmickys, that's a lot of hot air!
Now, as you can imagine, he would need loads of them, making it almost impossible to even get this many of them. And as you can imagine, all of this took ages and a lot of effort to calculate. So please share this video everywhere to show me my math efforts weren't for nothing.
I've done so much real math just to figure out some of the simplest things, it's crazy. I haven't done this amount of complex math in the past 5 years of my life.
So, yeah, I would highly appreciate sharing or promoting it, because now we finally know how many balloons Luigi would really need to be up in the air.